Da klokka der, så da tror jeg ønsker dere alle hjertelig velkommen til webinar som vi i Abilia skal holde i dag. Vi utrolig stolte og glade for å presentere Aphasia Duo 9 og 16 for dere i dag. Vi lanserte dette oppsettet i Norge rett før ISEC-konferansen og hadde også en presentasjon der, og det var veldig stas. Og jeg kan ikke få sagt mange nok ganger hvor glad jeg i navnet på disse oppsettene. Aphasia Duo, det jo nettopp det kommunikasjon handler om. At vi en duo som prater sammen. Ikke den fin? Bakgrunnen for dette navnet vil vi også si enda mer om under webinaret. Oppsettene nå tilgjengelig for alle dere som har en gridmaskin eller har grid installert på en PC. Siden dette nytt og nylig lansert, så må det kjøres en Smartbox update først, og da vil dere finne oppsettene ved å trykke på menylinja, legge til oppsett, velg symbolkommunikasjon, og der finner dere afasi-oppsettene. Jeg heter Gro Solveig Katterås, og det som skal lede dere gjennom dette webinaret i dag, sammen med Smartbox. Vi gleder oss veldig og håper at dere blir like inspirerte og begeistret som oss. Og på dette webinaret i dag så vi så heldige at vi med oss Rosen og Eva Smets fra Smartbox. Smartbox de som utvikler grid, og Karina sammen med Eva har vært svært delaktige med å få Aphasia Duo-oppsettene for oss her i Norge. Vi har et tett og godt samarbeid med Smartbox og arbeider veldig bra sammen for å få de beste kommunikasjonsløsningene til våre brukere. I Abilia så vi 5 veldig dyktige og gilde damer som jobber med ASK. Så ta kontakt med oss om dere ønsker at vi skal komme ut og vise dere alle mulighetene som finnes i grid, eller dere har noen spørsmål dere lurer på etter webinaret. Og selvsagt også om det noe annet dere lurer på. Vi her for dere. Det betyr at mesteparten av dette webinaret vil foregå på engelsk, og jeg skal straks introdusere Karina og Eva fra Smartbox for dere. De vil sammen gå gjennom Aphasia Duo 9 og 16 og fortelle litt om bakgrunnen for dette oppsettet, og hvordan det bygd opp, forskning bak med mer. Dere har mulighet til å stille spørsmål, og det kan dere også gjøre på norsk. Hvis dere ønsker, så skal jeg prøve så godt jeg kan å oversette. Spørsmål skriv dere ned i chatten, så skal vi besvare dem på best mulig måte. Det vil også være et opptak av dette webinaret. Så da går jeg over til engelsk. So now I would like to introduce you for Karina and Eva. We in Abilia are so glad you could be together with us on the webinar today, and I'm sure all the participants also really look forward to hear you tell us more about Aphasia Duo 9 and 16. We are so happy and proud to be a part of a so strong and professional team. So, dear Karina and Eva, you can now start introducing yourself and let the show begin. I will stop the sharing.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm just going to share my screen. Is that sharing okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, as I'm sure Gra said already, welcome to the webinar today. My name is Ava and I'm a speech and language therapist and I work in the content team at Smartbox.
Yeah, so my name is Karina. I'm working also as a speech and language therapist, or I was a speech and language therapist now working for Ria Vista in Germany as part of the Smartbox family. And I also, glad to work with the content team together with Smartbox for Aphasia Duo. So yeah, welcome to the webinar today. We're glad that you are here. Perhaps you're just familiar with the topic Aphasia Duo. Perhaps you were at the ISEC conference and you want to have some more information today. So yeah, very welcome here.
So as Garaz said, we're going to be talking about Aphasia Duo for the next hour or so. You may already know that Aphasia Duo is a set of 2 symbol vocabularies, and it's designed for people with aphasia and their communication partners. We launched Aphasia Duo in October 2024 in UK and US English and in German. And Smartbox and partners have been working really hard on translating Aphasia Duo into other languages. And we're really excited that Duo is now available in Norwegian. Aphasia Duo contains a range of communication supports to suit the needs of a wide range of people with aphasia. And the name relates to the idea of a duo or a dyad of people. So not just the person with aphasia, but also their communication partner. And the vocabulary is designed to be used together to help support and co-construct communication. So here is an overview of what we're going to be covering today. We will just recap what exactly aphasia is and how it can impact on communication. We'll discuss why AAC can be really helpful for people with aphasia. We'll talk you through our development process of Aphasia Duo. For the biggest part of the webinar, we're going to be doing a demonstration of Aphasia Duo within Grid, and there will also be some time for questions at the end. If you would like to ask your questions in Norwegian, please feel free to type those in the chat and they will be translated for us to cover at the end, because unfortunately, Karina and I don't speak Norwegian. And Aphasia Duo is included in Grid 3 and Grid for iPads, and you can get free trials of those. I think we will pop those links in the chat for you. What is aphasia? I imagine that the majority of you already know, but just to make sure that we all have the same understanding, aphasia is an umbrella term for acquired language difficulties, and these can affect speaking, reading, writing, and understanding. And an individual may have some or all of these aspects of communication affected. There are different types of aphasia which can present quite differently. It can be progressive, such as primary progressive aphasia. For lots of people, aphasia can improve over time as the individual recovers. It's fairly common following a stroke, with around 25 to 50% of people who have had a stroke experiencing aphasia. And aphasia could also occur as a result of other types of brain injury or illness, such as a brain tumour, infection or inflammation of the brain, or a traumatic brain injury. And it's estimated that in Norway, more than 4,000 people will be diagnosed with aphasia post-stroke every year.
Yes, I'm sure you are familiar with these terms, AAC and aphasia, but just to make sure that everyone gets the same understanding when we talk about AAC, we're talking about augmentative and alternative communication. So it is anything that someone is using alongside their speech or instead of their speech to support them to communicate. And Aphasia Duo is AAC that's specifically designed for the people with aphasia. We just wanted to share a bit of context about what's useful to think about when we are talking about AAC and aphasia. So the first thing that we want to highlight is that the knowledge and awareness of using AAC with people with aphasia is actually really low. We found a study there was said that only around half of the caregivers had actually been given any information about AAC in the first few months after stroke. So raising awareness of this topic is still a very important step, but it is the context we're actually working with. Another common issue that's helpful to highlight are that in aphasia intervention, often AAC is only thought about or considered for those people who've got really severe aphasia, almost like, well, we tried everything and maybe we'll try AAC now because it's really severe. Nothing other helps, for example. But we know from research that it can be really beneficial for people with more mild or moderate forms of aphasia. And there is often a focus on language recovery. So the person has lost skills following their stroke, and the focus of therapy is often on regaining those skills rather than thinking about how to compensate for that person's difficulties. So the question should be, how can we help them to communicate whilst we're also helping them to recover those language skills? And finally, an issue that is not just in AAC and aphasia, we see this in other areas of AAC, but the focus is often on just supporting someone to communicate for a really limited range of functions. So really focusing, for example, on helping someone to ask for something they want or to get basic needs met, like getting dressed. But we know that there is so much more to communicate than that. You communicate obviously for lots of different reasons every day. So just really that casual conversation, asking someone how they are, how their weekend was, sharing information, telling stories, telling jokes. There are so many reasons that we communicate that really led to rich interaction and relationships, and it's so important. Yeah, that's just to highlight before. We brought some quotes here. We found some quotes in the literature, and we think they really support what we've done with Aphasia Duo, and also just things to think about. So firstly, a really nice quote that's highlighting how AAC can be used to empower people with aphasia to fully participate and engage in life activities with increased independence. This absolutely emphasize our goal for Aphasia Duo, I think. With Aphasia Duo, we want to help people to be more active and participate in the things they want to do just in everyday life and do things more independently. That's an absolutely aim, yeah. The next quote that we found, and we also really want to highlight, is that there is no evidence that using electronic AAC will reduce someone's with aphasia use of speech. So this is a really common fear when we are introducing AAC to any some speech, but there is no evidence that this is the case. And yeah, just a nice thing to share with people who might be working with. And it leads us to the third quote, also a nice piece of research that highlights when you're delivering therapy to someone with aphasia, that recovery of communication skills actually improves more when electronic AAC is being used than therapy without electronic AAC. So yeah, a really nice reassurance that we're doing the right thing with using AAC, and also a great motivator to use it more frequently, I think.
So now I'd love to share a little bit more about our development process of Aphasia Duo with you all. So it was quite a long process. It was about 13 months from start to finish. And it started with a comprehensive literature review, just looking at AAC and aphasia, but also looking at aphasia more broadly and the types of difficulties that people with aphasia might experience. We realised early on that because of how much variation there is within aphasia, that any grid sets that we made would need to have lots of different elements to try and meet the needs of a wide range of people. So we then began our grid set development, and these changed quite drastically over the course of the development process. We were really lucky to be able to get feedback from experts in the field of AAC worldwide. And furthermore, we were also fortunate to get feedback from clinicians who were working with people with aphasia every day. Another part of our development process was carrying out user testing. So we were trying out the vocabularies with people with aphasia and their families, and we obtained their feedback. And we were then able to reflect on what was working well for them and what was not working so well. And we were able to continue the grid sets accordingly. So what is Aphasia Duo? As we've mentioned, it's a set of two supported grid sets. So we have it in 9 and 16. And there are three main areas in both vocabularies. So we have support for communication, we have visual scenes and topics. And we'll show you around these areas in the demonstration shortly. There are also some additional supports designed to help with word finding difficulties and to support chatting and interaction with a range of different people. So Aphasia Duo is designed primarily for touch access, but it can be used with a keyguard. But both 9 and 16 can also be used with alternative access, such as eye gaze or pointer. So here you can see the home screens 9 and 16, and there are a lot of similarities between the two. Both are designed to support with communication in everyday life, in meaningful situations and conversations, but there are also some differences we want to highlight as well. So we'd love to give you a bit of a tour now of some of the main areas of Duo 9 and 16. So here we're going to start off on the home grid of Duo 9. The first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is the toolbars, which you can see down the left and the right-hand side. We know from research that people with aphasia can find navigation within AAC quite difficult. So that's why we introduced these toolbars. So there's easy access to some of the main areas of the vocabulary, such as the supports, the scenes, and the topics at all times. And you can also see that there is a toolbar highlight. So it quickly shows you which area of the vocabulary you're in. At the bottom there, you can see we have arrows to support navigation. And on the top right, we have an info grid. This is available on almost all of the grids within Aphasia Duo. We can jump into that quickly. And this basically tells you the title of that grid, and it tells you a little bit of information about how that grid can be used, or perhaps how it can be edited if it's an editable grid. And you can also touch those sections of text and they will speak aloud. So that is to support not only the person with aphasia, but also the communication partner. So just coming back to the home grid, you can see that Duo 9 has 9 communication cells, and this starts off in supports. So supports is an area where you have a whole range of tools and features to support with communication. So I'll talk you through some of these sections. The first one I want to share is My Life. This is an area that can be personalised with lots of autobiographical information about the person with aphasia. So you might want to include details here about themselves, their routine, their family. So here you can see there is space for an image, and all around the image there are space for some phrases which you can personalise. The majority of Aphasia Duo has wordless cells. We made this decision because they are really quick and easy to personalise, which Karina's just going to demonstrate. You can go into the menu, edit word. You can see all the phrases and words in the list. Very easy to add an item. You can then save it. And also very easy to remove any items that aren't relevant for that individual. But very quick. There are several other sections in My Life which can be personalised. You can add information about hobbies, about the stroke or brain injury, and also about communication, perhaps things that are tricky now and ways that other people can support communication. And there is also room for some photo albums. The next section in supports is chatting. So as the name suggests, this is to support with conversation. You can see some phrases to start the conversation, to ask questions, to make comments, to help repair conversation. And also, if you click on more, you can see there are also some question words there as well. The next section is mental health. Mental health is really important for all of us, but people with aphasia are at higher risk of developing things like depression and anxiety. So we felt it was really important to include a range of different words, phrases, questions to support with mental health. So there are words and phrases to support with feelings and physical sensations. There are also areas that have been influenced by the research. For example, there's an area where you can talk about your therapy goals. Research highlights the positive impacts of being able to talk about what you want to work on in therapy and being able to actively participate in that. So we've included some examples of goals of things that people with aphasia might commonly be working on after their stroke or their events. Research and intervention has also highlighted that it's important for people with aphasia to be able to ask some of those difficult questions, even if they don't necessarily always have clear answers. So things like, why did it happen? Will it happen again? Who will help me? So that is the mental health section. In this next blue column, we have some supports which mirror lots of the paper-based resources which therapists might use. Sometimes people with aphasia can struggle with their yes and no responses, and they might say the wrong thing. So we have a simple grid to help clarify that. We also have access to some rating scales. So you have a visual way of saying how you feel, how your pain is, or what you think about different things. And when you select one, you can see it also hides the other options to just reduce that visual clutter. And then finally, in this column, we have some schedules to just help support memory, help people plan their days. And these, we have some populated ones and some blank ones as well, which could be used in rehab to support with tasks that people are relearning. Here is an example of a morning and afternoon schedule, which again is a word list, so it can be really easily personalized.
Okay, we'll go into the next column. So we've got a whiteboard here. So anyone who's familiar with Grid will recognize that this is a really new feature that we didn't have before Aphasia Duo. We kept this really nice and simple here. There is a little bit more functionality when we get to Aphasia Duo 16, but in Aphasia Duo 9 we wanted to keep it simple. So it is a simple electronic version of your pen and paper that we know is really commonly used with people with aphasia and can be really helpful for if you're experiencing a communication difficulty. So perhaps, you're looking for a word, but you cannot say the word. You try to finding a word. You have an idea of it, for example, and then you can use the whiteboard to draw the word, perhaps. So I can draw a word here on the whiteboard, and the communication partner can recognize what it is you're trying to communicate, or perhaps it's not an image that you have in mind, but you really got some letters, for example, and then maybe you can start to write those letters. Your communication partner can be guessing, for example, what you're trying to say. And another way also a whiteboard can be used and can be helpful is also with your communication partner. In terms of Aphasia Duo, communication partner is really relevant as a partner in communication, that your communication partner is writing down keywords as they are communicating with the person with this aphasia. So that's something that can be really helpful for some people with aphasia to see words, the keywords within a conversation as someone is talking to them, to support their understanding. And another possibility to use the whiteboard, for example, could also be as a part of therapy. For example, if I want to write or make a training and you need to write a letter down which is missing in a word, and you need to find this letter and put it in, you can also use the whiteboard for that. Yeah. The next section is called Chat Help, and it is something that is really developed as we were user testing and getting some feedbacks from clinicians. And it's designed to support with conversation as well as having support to find single words and communication about different topics. So sometimes perhaps you can think about some situation. If you are in a conversation with a person with aphasia, for example, there is a word set maybe, but or gestured also, but you're not still clear what the meaning was. And chat help can be really helpful in this situation to try and establish what the meaning is. So maybe a person with aphasia has pointed out of the window and the communication partner could use this grid to try and work out. So perhaps, okay, you're telling me something about a place. Is it about a place? I can ask. The person can indicate yes or no. Is it a place or is it about outside? This person can indicate yes and no. And so I can ask, oh, do you want something? You're telling me you want to do something outside. And the question or the person says no. And I'm trying again and ask, is it a question? Do you ask me a question about something outside? And so forth. So if someone can indicate yes and no, you can try to use this and narrow down what it is they are trying to tell you to find it out. And we had a lot of positive feedback, particularly from communication partner. It's often been the family around the person with aphasia, all the therapists that have said this will be so helpful. And also we experienced it ourselves. We've been using this during the user testing. So not necessarily something here that we have that the person with aphasia is using straight away, but also for the partners as a reassurance, and it can prevent misunderstandings and frustration in communication, ensuring that we understand each other correctly. So that's the chat help tool here. The next section in the support is maps. This again is something that's been really helpful and evolved throughout user testing and work with experts that having visual supports for talking about places. The names of places can be really difficult to remember, and just being able to have a conversation about where you lived or where you traveled, where you like to travel can be very valuable. So we go into some of the examples here. I think I will choose Europe. Yeah, and that's the familiar layout that we've seen in My Life, in the My Life section. We have the big central photo in the middle, the large image, and the phrases around those images. And also, if we are going and use more, you see I've got some really useful single word vocabulary as well. And again, these are all word lists, so it's really quick to add it and to be personalized. The idea here is that these images that are in the central, people with aphasia or persons that are using this can point to the picture, and you can use the phrases around. And yeah, again, that's really helpful for communicating and also to make sure if you're introducing Aphasia Duo, you have some kind of topics that you can talk through and yeah, build a connection to talk about where somebody's from, or yeah, who had the special holiday, where you had the special holiday. So it can be really helpful to make these first connections. There is a second page of supports. So the second page of supports, we've got, for example, settings. In the settings, you can check your volume, you can change it to louder or to quieter. You have the possibility to check your brightness, and these settings will vary slightly depending on what device you're using. For example, if you're using a GridPad 13, for example, and you have a second screen, then you will have the possibility to switch on or off your second screen, for example. And you have the possibility, because if you've seen it on the first, here on the second support page, we have some keyboards. And via your settings, you can change your keyboard. So you have the possibility, or you can choose between 3 keyboards, a QWERTY, a ABC, and a 2-hit keyboard. The 2-hit keyboard is with 9 cells, so it's keyguard accessible if you need a keyguard to access the cells, for example, or you need that because of visual impairments or visual, you need visual cells, or you need bigger cells for visual access. And also you have the possibility to choose between with word predictions or without word predictions, and you can choose the auditory output. So you can choose if there is no output, if you're using the letter names, or if you're using yeah, a phonemic cue. We see that the phonemic cues can be really helpful if you're trying to find a word. You can use it to yeah, to find the word as a communication partner, to give a phonemic cue, or also perhaps you know the first letter and you can push it and then you can hear the auditory feedback here. So that can be really helpful. That's the settings and the keyboard here. Then we have the camera option. So the camera, so whichever camera you've got on your device. If that's an iPad, for example, it uses the iPad camera. So perhaps the person with aphasia wants to take a photo when someone comes to visit them, and then they can go back to take a look at the photo. There are Simojis, for example. We're using Simojis a lot in the grid content. Also, yeah, a possibility to communicate different ideas in another way. And we get some smart speakers here, really common for people now to use those smart speakers, and that's a really nice way to interact with those smart speakers. Again, these are all wordless cells, so we have some examples here, but you can personalize them very easy and quickly via change the word list. I think that's it here for the support.
Oh, so the next sections we're going to talk through are scenes. So scenes comes from the research on visual scene displays. And the thinking behind this is that these grids have space for a large central image or photo, and around it are related words and phrases to really support participation and interaction. In Aphasia Duo, we have a range of 60 different scenes for all different kinds of topics and situations. To give a few examples, there are scenes to support with daily activities, for example, cooking. You can see here this familiar format that you will have seen in Maps and My Life. This is a word list, so really easy to add and remove phrases and words. And you can see as well that we have tried to include phrases for different communication reasons. So not just requesting, but also perhaps initiating an activity or asking a question or sharing an opinion. We can show a few more examples. There are scenes to support with visiting specific places, so the doctor or a museum. You have relevant vocabulary for that as well. And the research on visual scenes says that they work best when they are personalised for the person with aphasia. So ideally, these photographs will be of the person with aphasia interacting in that situation or with that other person, with that task. And the words and phrases will also be personalised to what they want to say. We do recognise that it's not always going to be possible to get a photo of the person with aphasia. For example, they have an optician's appointment coming up, but we can't get that photo taken before the appointment. So we've always included a photograph to help cue into that situation, to hopefully help cue in the relevant language. And the research suggests that if you can't have a photo of the person with aphasia for some reason, you could have a photo of somebody that they know well in that situation, or you could try to find a photo for somebody who's the same age, the same gender and a similar age, so that the person with aphasia recognises themselves somewhat in that photograph. And the next section I want to show you is the topics section. So topics is where you will find the single words in Aphasia Duo, and these have been organised into different categories. There are 2 pages of categories in Aphasia Duo 9. Some categories are organised into subcategories because it's quite a large category. So an example here is food. You can see here that we have multiple subcategories. For example, if you want to talk about snacks or vegetables. So you can see here we always have 9 communication cells, so 8 cells of that particular topic or category, and we've always included the option of something else or somewhere else, depending on what that category is. And the words that are found in topics are also influenced by research. There was some research by Palmer et al. Who looked at the words that people with aphasia wanted to be able to say. So that's influenced the kinds of words that we've included here in Aphasia Duo. So now we will change to Duo 16, and we will show you some of the similarities and also some of the differences between the 2 vocabs.
The first thing you'll notice here that the cells are much smaller. So we've got 16 communication cells in Aphasia Duo 16. That's the name compared to the 9 that we saw in Aphasia Duo 9. So this will be suitable for people who have got better physical access, perhaps. Yeah, many of the people that we've been trying this with have been able to access the 16 cells, but we know it's very common with people with aphasia for them to have visual difficulties following their strokes. So it's worth having those assessed and knowing whether someone can cope with 16 cells. And the slight increase in visual complexity here in comparison to Duo 9. So we want to point out some of the things that are the same, which is we've got those 2 toolbars down on either side, on the left and the right side, and a lot of consistency between Duo 9 and Duo 16 in terms of where things are. And that's not because we are expecting people to start using Aphasia Duo 9 and then ending up using Aphasia Duo 16 at all, really. The consistency, it's designed to support people who are working with both grid sets, for example, with people with aphasia. So the therapist who might be seeing multiple individuals using Aphasia Duo 9 and Aphasia Duo 16, they want to use both or assess both. so they can orientate much easier here because there are a lot of similarities in organizing. So we've got on the left-hand side in the toolbar support, themes, and topics, as we saw in Duo 9. We got the navigation in each corner, and we got the info grid here at the right-hand side at the top. And you might have already spotted there are a few extra things here, which we'll cover shortly. But I just want to go through some of the things we've looked at already so you can see how things are the same and how things are different. So first of all, some of the things that we found in the support sections in Duo 9, we pulled out and put here in the topics page in the home grid, because the home grid in Aphasia Duo 16 is actually taking you straight into topics rather than taking you into the range of supports. So we've got my life here right in the top left corner because it's been such a helpful place to start with people. We've got exactly the same sections. I have about me, things about my daily routine, all the things Eva talked through in Aphasia Duo 9. If I go into one of the examples here, you see, as before, we've got a large central image and a prompt to add your own photos. We heard that's very important for people with aphasia to put their own photo here. We got word list cells around because it's 16 cells. We've got space for more vocabulary on the grid. So perhaps if I will search for, oh no, I think, no, we don't have a, Eva, do you imagine if we have a relevant jump here in a section? Or is it only in the themes?
In the themes, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
It's fine. So yeah, that's the My Life section, and we have pulled out the news also from the support. So there are a lot of templates in there, so people can talk about things that happened, that have happened to them recently. My news. There is one example of the news. So we've got a prompt to add your own photo and word list cells around the outside in the other blank news. So that's the My News. Then we have the chatting section here. So in Duo 9, that was very simple phrases that you could use in conversation every day with anyone. But in Duo 9, it's really broken down into the type of persons you're talking to, and you've got examples of it here. So you might be talking to carers or talking to strangers or to neighbors, and the phrases you would use for those different people, some of them are the same, but some of them are different. So if I go to family and friends, you can see as it's the same kind of design. We've got phrases to start a conversation, asking questions, and keep a conversation going, and also phrases that you choose towards the end of the conversation. For example, again, our word cells really quickly edited and changed. And you might decide, because we know it's a lot, that you're actually just going to introduce one or two of these to start with, or just starting with one of that's relevant for them and hide the other ones. There are also in these chatting section generic phrases as well that you could quickly use with anyone. And we got some other topics here down at the right-hand side for different communication functions, because we know it's really helpful if we can disagree with someone, or also if we're able to paying someone a compliment, or also for asking questions, and really important for people with aphasia, a possibility for fixing conversations. So all of the different ways that we can communicate and that can be useful for our target group here. Yeah. Okay, then we go straight to the topics again. in the topics that we saw in Duo 9. There are some differences. I will go to the topic here. So you see, we've got all of the subcategories that we've seen in the Duo 9 sections, in the eating section here, but we've also got some sentence starters. For example, you can combine those. If you have the possibility to combine those, you can touch them and you can see them written down in the chat writing area. If you're touching the chat writing area, it will repeat what you've said, or you can delete it. And yeah, it's also for the person with aphasia who wants to combine phrases or who wants to learn to combine phrases, but also for the communication partner as well, to be, it can be used to clarify something. So perhaps if you're in the drinks, for example, and you see that the person with aphasia selected tea, for example, and you might be wanting to say, oh, you like tea? As a communication partner, I can model that. Oh, do you like tea? Or do you want some more tea? And I combine it for the person with aphasia, so I can show how I can combine those things. Really consistent also in the section here, also as we have in a Duo 9, is something else at the right at the bottom right corner. It's on every grid, so that you can also say it's not here what I want to say, it's something else. If we go to the scenes, we were, for example, in the cooking grid, so I choose that again to compare it. We have that large central photo here in the middle and phrases around the outside, but we've got also words here on the same grid. So in Duo 9, it is split across two grids. The first grid are the phrases, and if I choose more in Duo 9, I will come to my words here, because we have more, the possibility to have all in one. And also, that's what I thought we have also in my life, but it's in the scenes here, we have some relevant jumps in the top right corner here. So if I, for example, I'm in the cooking grid and I want to say something about eating, I can choose eating, and it leads you straight away to the topic where I'm on my eating grid, and I see it as in the visual highlights here. It's highlighted here that I'm in the topics, and if I go back, it's going back to the scenes. So yeah, perhaps it's a little bit easier to have those helpful jumps, as I can use them here in case of navigation, to make navigation easier. And we think that people who are using Aphasia Duo 16 can manage this more complexity and can use this helpful jumps at the scenes here.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
One other thing that you might have mentioned in Duo 16 is that there's also a little bit of space for the grid title at the bottom of the grid. So this is, again, because we have a bit more space. So it's just that written prompt, and it's also an auditory prompt. It speaks aloud if you select it. So it's just to kind of provide that orientation to where you are and what sort of vocabulary you might expect on that page. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the right-hand toolbar, which has a bit more in it than it does in Duo 9. So below the info jump, the first thing you come to is chat help. Because we have a bit more room in Duo 16 and people using this are likely to have less significant visual and physical difficulties, we've pulled that out onto the right toolbar. So you can see the chat help grids, which Karina talked through in Duo 9. Just to recap, this is something that can be used if the person with aphasia has communicated part of their message and you're not really clear what the reason is for their communication. You can use this to help narrow it down. The next section in the right toolbar is called word help. This feature is to help for those times where the person with aphasia is experiencing word finding difficulties. So they might have an idea of the word they want to say in their heads, but they're really struggling to access it and say it out loud. So this grid provides a scaffolded way to use some of the different supports and strategies that we have within Aphasia Duo. And these 3 cells are using language or prompts which speech therapists would likely be using in therapy sessions. There's a therapy approach called semantic feature analysis, which speech therapists often use to help somebody use their knowledge of the word when it's difficult to say. So the first one here says, I can draw it. If you select that, it navigates you through to the whiteboard. And you can see here the whiteboard in Duo 16 has a little bit more functionality built in. You can change your pen thickness and you can change your pen color. And you could do a drawing to help get your message across. And as Karina mentioned previously, you can also use it to write, and communication partners can also use it as well. And there is research to support the fact that drawing can aid word retrieval. So this is a really important tool for lots of people with aphasia. Going back to word help, we've got these 2 other suggestions or prompts. The next one is if you know the category. And this one navigates to an area called the picture dictionary. So this section is really useful if you are the person with aphasia and you can't access the word you want to say, but you know what type of word it is, you know what category it belongs to. So for example, my word, I know that it's a piece of clothing. So I could go to the clothes section here, and this is now a long word list of different items of clothing. And I could scroll through that and use the words and the symbols, and hopefully I will find what I need here. But if not, that related language and symbols can sometimes help you access the word as well. Just going back to the picture dictionary. Hopefully this page might look a little bit familiar to you. You can see that the layout, we have matched this to the topics page. So the categories are in the same place as on the topics. So that just helps with motor planning and helps with familiarity. We'll go back to word help now and look at the last strategy there. And this one is if you know the first letter. So for example, you can't access the word, but you know that it begins with a P. It jumps to your keyboard, you can enter P, and now there is a long word list which is filtered by P. So you see all the words that begin with the letter P. If the person knows the next letter, they can also keep adding letters in. So yeah, those are just some really helpful tools to support those word finding difficulties that are common in aphasia.
And perhaps one addition only, in the picture dictionary, you could have the same possibility. So if you know the category and also know a letter, you can also access here the letters in the keyboard and you will come to the same, but it then will only search in your category that you've chosen before. So I'm in the category clothes now. I type in the P and now he's narrowing down it to all the words that are starting with a P in clothing, for example. So this additional feature you also have in the picture dictionary. If you know an additional letter, it can help you here to find your word.
Thanks, Karina. And then the last thing in the right toolbar is the keyboards, which is also there for quick access. So that's the last thing we wanted to show you within Aphasia Duos. So I'm just going to go back to sharing my screen. We just have a couple more slides.
Yeah.
So now we've shown you around the 2 versions of Duo, you will have a better idea of some of the similarities and the differences between the 2. So there are lots of factors you might want to take into account when you're considering which version is best for the individual. If the person has more significant language, cognitive, visual or physical difficulties, they may find find accessing Duo 9 easier because it has larger cells and reduced content. But if the individual has less severe aphasia or their primary difficulty is word finding, they might prefer having more cells per page, more potential to combine words and phrases to build sentences, and some additional supports to help with word finding difficulties.
Yeah, that's only 2 slides now for just a short overview. So just a short summary for what Aphasia Duo has the key points on. So there are a range of tools for a range of needs and functions. For example, we have 2 sizes: word finding supports, conversational level supports. So there are a lot of tools into it that that are in Aphasia Duo and that can be used. And there are these features are linked to it. So there are rating scales for biographical information, my life, and photo albums, for example. A lot of research is done in visual scenes. So we make sure that visual scenes are also implemented here with phrases and with words, so that you can see where a person stands, what the sources are from the person, and to try with sentences there, or to try with words with them, for example. A whiteboard feature, because drawing can be helpful in word finding and also writing down letters, for example. So yeah, a range of features and tools here we take into account when we build Aphasia Duo. Just an overview for you.
We have some supporting resources to go alongside Aphasia Duo. So these ones on this slide are English resources. So on YouTube, there is a playlist of bite-sized videos talking you through things like how to personalize, how you can use features like chat help and word help. Those videos are all very short, sort of between 2 and 10 minutes each. On Smartbox Academy, there's an Aphasia Duo course that you can do your learning at your own pace. And then on the Smartbox Hub is where you will find manuals and personalization guides and checklists. And there are also some Norwegian resources, which I believe are being shared in the chat. So we just want to thank you for joining the webinar today. We really hope that you found it helpful. I think there have been a couple of questions in the chat, and feel free to ask some questions if you have any. I just also want to say that we would love your feedback on this webinar. If you could take a moment, there is a QR code here and there are some 4 very quick questions. Yeah, we'd be really grateful for your feedback, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much. There are actually one good question asking if you have any experience about using symbols instead of photographies with the aphasia.
I suppose the vocabulary has some symbols and some photographs. So I would say that both have been useful for the people with aphasia that we've tried it with. I think with something like the visual scenes, there's so much research in that photographs being particularly beneficial there, especially when they're personalized, so of that person with aphasia, or if not, that they are somebody that the person with aphasia recognizes or relates to. So yeah, I would agree that in visual scenes, the photographs have been really useful. But I think in general across the vocabulary, symbols are used really widely. And yeah, a lot of people with aphasia will struggle with reading. So I think those symbols are a really helpful general support. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, fine, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't find any more questions, but in the end, I would like to show you something from our website. But I have to thank you a lot for your presentation, Karina and Eva. It was really great to hear from you. And I'm sure we all learned a lot. I'm learning new things every time I talk with you, so that's good. Now I'll talk a little bit Norwegian before we end the webinar, but if there are any questions, I will let you know.
Thank you.
Jeg tenker, jeg vil bare vise dere, hvis jeg nå ser, can you see my screen now?
Ja.
Inne på vår hjemmeside så har vi under våre hjelpemidler og kommunikasjon, så har vi også en del ressurser der i forhold til filmer, men hvis vi går inn på den med programvaren, hvis det er noen av dere som er nysgjerrige, men som ikke har Grid installert, så vil man ved å trykke på Grid programvare, så vil man ha muligheten her til å laste ned en prøvelisens i 60 dager og hente Aphasia Duo-oppsettene. Så det anbefaler jeg dere å gjøre. Og så håper jeg at dere også kommer med en tilbakemelding og at dere evaluerer det her i dag. Så ja, I can't see any more questions, så da sier jeg bare tusen takk for at dere møtte opp. Ha en strålende fredag, og så send oss gjerne en mail hvis det er noe i etterkant. Ok, thank you. Bye bye.
Tusen takk.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.